right, time for a little sports in the law. New Jersey's efforts to bring legal sports betting to its horse tracks and Atlantic City casinos suffered another significant and potentially fatal setback on Tuesday when a federal appeals court upheld a previous ruling invalidating a challenge to a federal law that limits such gambling to 4 states. Steve Moskowitz is our sports in the law expert here. Why could this be fatal right now? Why is this the end?
Because last time they tried it, they had some better issues. Now the courts turn them down, and basically what New Jersey needs to do is go to Congress and say, look, this law you enacted a quarter of a century ago has an impact you didn't understand. It's also unfair that a few other states can do this, and this is what the people want. And if you don't do it, there's all this illegal gambling going on that's really harmful. We can regulate it, tax it. It's going to happen. It would be so much better. Essentially, that's what they need to convince Congress of.
It's funny. When I think of sports gambling, I strictly think of Nevada. But 4 states are able to?
Yes, that's what some of the things with the Indian casinos. They kind of got in.
Ah, okay, because I know Oregon, Delaware, and Montana, of all places, is involved. Why is there a federal law from 1992 not allowing sports betting in the 46 other states?
Because Congress, in their infinite wisdom, looked at gambling as something that was kind of evil, and they said, okay, where it is, they'll let it stay, and they bring in the studies where they say, oh, this has bad effects on people, and it shouldn't be. And again, it's Congress trying to regulate people's morality, and that never works.
All righty, and so what happens next? Is it fatal, or is there a next step New Jersey can take?
It most probably is fatal, but again, I think their best shot is going to Congress and having the law changed.
All right, story number 2 on Monday. The U.S. Supreme Court denied a request to review the NFL settlement with retired players. The former players had accused the league of hiding the dangers of head trauma. This has to do with concussions and what's going on with repetitive injuries, blows to the head. Why deny the request to review?
Because at some point, it's time that it's enough, and these players need to get paid. This has been exhaustive for years. It's gone through the courts. The original settlement, the judge said not enough. The cap came off of it, and now it's time for these families to get some money.
So some players...
There's always somebody that's unhappy with it.
Clearly, and some of these players could receive up to $5 million to help out. So how important is it to act swiftly? I mean, sure, you could battle away and he might get $10 million. He might not be around.
That's right. Most people need the money now. They're not some giant institution that say, well, we can wait for 65 years. They need it now.
Who's covered by this? Who's covered? Is it just people who were involved in the suit? What's the situation?
What's happened is there's some people that opted out, so that's going to be something different. But here, it's the vast majority of them.
What I found interesting is the NHL is in a legal battle with its former players on this. So how could this ruling affect the NHL situation, or could it?
It's knowledge, and basically it's going to be, what did you know? It's a big, big difference if I say, look, I know this is harmful, but I'm not going to tell you, as opposed to, you didn't know. That's a huge difference.
They all have unions. Shouldn't the union have told them? Can I argue, if I'm the league, can I say, they have a group that's supposed to be protecting them, they have the same information?
Sure, you can argue whatever you want, but then the defense is they didn't know, and then the other side says, well, yes, you did.
That's not a good argument.
Welcome to the practice of law.
That would not be a good trip to the courtroom. All right, final story. A state appeals court in Cleveland has ruled that the widow of a former Notre Dame football player can proceed with claims in a lawsuit that said her husband was disabled by and ultimately died from concussion-related head injuries suffered during his college career in the 1970s. So Notre Dame is where this happened. How important is this case where the wife of a former player now can proceed with the lawsuit?
This case is going to be far more challenging because this goes back to the 70s. And the defense is going to be, look, in the 70s, they really didn't know. The big deal with the NFL was, hey, you had these reports and you hit them. Back in the 70s, the argument is going to be they really didn't know.
In 2015, there was a judge that dismissed this suit. What was the situation? Why dismiss it?
Because he said you don't have the proper grounds. But in law, you have a case where you say, well, all right, you can go ahead and present your case. So let them present the case. I think they're going to lose because I think it's way too old, and they're going to say, look, there really wasn't the knowledge in the 70s there were later on.
How could this open the door for more college sports-related cases? Because normally we hear from the professionals. We haven't heard much from the colleges. There's a little bit. But could this open a door to college?
Yes, you're going to see it go down. College, high school, the little kids, and then it's a question of, well, now if you know all this and you're playing football, haven't you consented?
And that previous NFL case that we were talking about, does it affect this at all, the fact that there were some layers of knowledge? Because the players who are talking about this, right, it spans a few seasons. It spans more than just last year.
That's right. Again, what you're going to have is one side arguing, the other side say, no, it doesn't apply. No, we didn't know.
It's sad any way you slice it. There's no question about it. I know. Steve Moskowitz, our sports and the law expert. Excellent job, as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much.
We appreciate it. All right, we need the scoop.
Sportsnet Central Scoop.